The United Arab Emirates pledges to retaliate after 3 killed in Houthi attacks. As Canada sends special forces, United Kingdom gives Ukraine anti-tank weapons. The earthquake kills 22, rescue workers search for survivors. Latest test involved tactical guided missiles, says North Korea. Indonesia names new capital Nusantara as MPS back relocation. It's nice to have you join us on International News Desk here on ECWA Television Africa. Here are the details of top stories making the rounds at this hour and other stories. The UAE has promised retaliations after a drone attack claimed by Yemen's Houthi rebels caused a fuel tank blast that killed 3 people in Abu Dhabi. The United Arab Emirates is part of a Saudi-led military coalition that supports Yemen's government against the Iran-aligned Houthi rebels who have repeatedly targeted Saudi Arabia for other attacks. Nonetheless, Monday's attack is the first deadly assault on its own soil acknowledged by the UAE and claimed by the rebels, who alleged they had fired ballistic missiles and positioned armed drones. 2 Indians and a Pakistani working for oil giant ADNOC died as 3 petrol tanks exploded near a storage facility, while a fire also kindled a construction area at Abu Dhabi Airport in the heart of the United Arab Emirates. The police said in a statement, according to reports, preliminary investigations indicate the detection of small flying objects, possibly belonging to drones, that fell in the 2 areas and may have caused the explosion and fire, adding they had opened an investigation. Meanwhile, the group had carried out a successful military operation against important and sensitive Emirati sites and installations using both ballistic missiles and drones, Yahya Sari, the military spokesman of the Houthis, said. He also advised civilians and foreign firms to stay away from important installations in the UAE for their own security. The United Kingdom has commenced supplying Ukraine with anti-tank weapons, and Canada has reportedly deployed a small dependent of special forces to Kyiv amidst concerns of a possible attack by Russia. The development came as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov angrily rejected claims by the United States last week that Moscow was preparing an excuse to invade Ukraine if diplomacy failed to meet its objectives. While Moscow has deployed 100,000 troops near its border with Ukraine, denying plans for an attack against Ukraine, it has said it could take unspecified military actions unless the West agrees to a list of demands, including banning Kyiv from ever joining NATO. However, Washington and its partners have firmly rejected Moscow's demands, and Russia-US negotiations in Geneva and related to NATO-Russia meeting in Brussels ended last week without a breakthrough. Has since asked Western countries for arms to help it protect itself. The United Kingdom had taken the decision to supply Ukraine with light anti-armor defensive weapons systems. Speaking in the British Parliament on Monday, Defense Secretary Ben Wallace said. He added, saying the first weaponry was brought on Monday and a small number of British personnel will provide training for a short period of time, without specifying the number and type of weapons that were being sent. According to him, they are not strategic weapons and pose no threat to Russia. They are to use in self-defense. In a separate report on Monday, Wallace also addressed Russian claims of threats from NATO, saying the Western security alliance is to its core defensive. In Kyiv, Ukraine's defensive minister Oleksiy Reznikov welcomed the UK's support, saying in a Twitter post that his country highly appreciates Britain's decision to provide a new security package with light anti-armor defensive weapon systems. Still, officials said rescue workers are thoroughly looking for survivors after an earthquake in a remote western region of Afghanistan killed at least 22 people and damaged hundreds of houses. Monday's magnitude 5.3 shallow quake jolted the province of Baghdad and wrecked hundreds of homes, mostly in the rural Kurdish district, which is not easily accessible by road. Baghdad's provincial spokesman Baz Mohammed Sarwari said in a video message the earthquake caused massive damage to houses. About 700 to 1,000 have been damaged, adding there is the possibility that the casualties could increase. Images making rounds on social media disclosed residents, including children, searching through the rubble of collapsed homes for belongings and essential items. Rescue workers were helping find survivors and transferring the wounded to local hospitals, Taliban government spokesman Inamullah Samangani said. Officials said some of the victims, including women and children, died when the roofs of their houses collapsed. The earthquake also caused damage on the residents of Merg districts, but details, including casualties, are still unavailable. Despite a United Nations ban, North Korea has confirmed it carried out its fourth weapons test this month on Monday, firing 2 strategic guided missiles, the latest in a series of weapons tests. The Academy of Defense Science conducted a test of tactical guided missiles from the country's west, and they precisely hit an island target off the east coast, according to reports on Tuesday. The test fire was targeted to selectively assess strategic guided missiles being produced and deployed and to verify the accuracy of the weapon system, reports said, confirming the accuracy, security, and efficiency of the operation of the weapon system under production. Japan and South Korea both detected the launches, which took place at Pyongyang Airport and involved 2 short-range ballistic missiles. The North twice tested what it said were hypersonic missiles as well as a railway-mounted ballistic missile earlier this month. The tests have drawn international concern, with the United States calling for even tougher sanctions for the angering Pyongyang. The State Department said after a call with his South Korean and Japanese counterparts, the United States Special Representative for North Korea, Song Kim, urged Pyongyang to cease its unlawful and destabilizing activities and reopen dialogue, saying he was open to meeting without preconditions. The United Nations spokesman Stefan Dujarric also called the North test increasingly concerning during a briefing, calling for all parties to return to talks to defuse tension and promote a verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. North Korea is subject to international sanctions over its banned weapons programs, but began testing a range of new weapons after denuclearization talks delaying following the collapse of the 2019 summit between leader Kim Jong-un and then the U.S. President Donald Trump. A bill has been passed by Indonesia's parliament to relocate the nation's capital from Jakarta to a jungled area on Borneo Island. The new state capital, approved on Tuesday, provides a legal framework for President Joko Widodo's ambitious $32.5 billion mega project and stipulates how its development will be funded and governed. The president selected the new city's name Nusantara, a Japanese name for the Indonesian archipelago. Planning Minister Suharto Monafar told Parliament following the bill's message, the new capital has a central function and is a symbol of the identity of the nation, as well as a new center of economic gravity. His government predicts the new capital as a low-carbon super hub that will sustain the pharmaceutical, health and technology sectors and promote sustainable growth beyond Java Island, the country's most densely populated area. In Saudi Arabia, the Saudi-led coalition launches deadly air raids in Yemen's Sana'a. According to residents, the Saudi-led coalition has carried out air raids in the Yemeni capital Sana'a, killing more than 12 people a day after the Houthi rebel group launched a deadly attack in the United Arab Emirates (UAE). Saudi Arabia and the UAE interfered in Yemen's war in 2015 to reinstate the government of President Abu Mansur Hadi, who fled after Houthi rebels took over the capital and parts of northern Yemen in late 2014. The UAE largely scaled down its military presence in the country in 2019, but continues to hold power through the Yemeni forces it arms and trains. The coalition said it had begun air raids against strongholds and camps in Sana'a belonging to the Iran-aligned Houthi group early on Tuesday, according to the reports. The attack that killed about 14 people, according to initial estimates, hit the home of an official, according to reports. It killed him, his wife, his 25-year-old son, other family members, and some unidentified people, according to a medical source. In Israel, sources say Netanyahu discussing possible corruption case, plea deal to safeguard political career. 4 years, former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called his ongoing corruption trial a witch hunt and an attempted coup. Even though his criticisms of the case echoed words often heard from his once close ally, Donald Trump, Netanyahu is now digressing from the former U.S. president's methods. Two sources close to the matter said, according to reports, Netanyahu and his team have been discussing a possible plea deal with prosecutors in his corruption case. The negotiations, if fruitful, could be finalized in the next few weeks, according to the sources, and will bring an astonishing end to a years-long drama. Depending on the details of any eventual plea deal sentence, Netanyahu could be giving up politics for the next 7 years. Meanwhile, China's president urges West not to slam the brakes by increasing interest rates too fast. China is urging central banks in the West not to increase interest rates too fast to fight inflation as it goes in the other direction to battle a sharp economic slowdown. President Xi Jinping called on major world economies to stimulate growth by coordinating their policies as the world continues to pull itself out of the turmoil caused by the coronavirus pandemic. He told those who attended the 2022 World Economic Forum during a speech delivered online, the global industrial chains and supply chains have been interrupted. Commodity prices continue to hike. Energy supply remains tight. This risks compound one another and intensify the uncertainty about economic recovery. He warned against the effects of hiking interest rates too much, too quickly, saying that such measures could threaten global financial stability. Numerous global policymakers are struggling with rising inflationary pressure and starting to end their pandemic-era stimulus plans. The Federal Reserve mentioned last month it could increase interest rates 3 times in 2022, while the European Central Bank announced it will end its crisis-era bond buying program in March. The Bank of England raised interest rates last month, becoming the first major bank to do so since the pandemic began. Central banks in Eastern Europe and Latin America have also raised interest rates aggressively to cool inflation. But China, the only major economy to grow in 2020, is taking a different policy as its economy slows and it struggles with the challenges of maintaining momentum while holding firm to its zero-COVID strategy, a strict policy of locking down areas to prevent outbreak that has secluded much of the world. Economists from the Federal wrote last June that danger of spillover to developing markets depends on a few factors, including conditions within those regions and how vulnerable and sensitive they are to higher United States rates. Now in Africa, the United Nations, Libya elections could be held in June. Libya is expected to hold its general elections in June after missing the December deadline to elect its first president since the 2001 ouster and killing of longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi. According to reports, National Advisor on Libya, Stephanie Williams, who has been pursuing this agenda, said late Sunday that it is still very reasonable and possible and for the country's 2.8 million voters to cast their ballots by June, in line with the United Card 2020 roadmap. The country's failure to hold its first ever presidential election came as a surprise to many, especially international bodies that had put in measures to ensure the elections could be held in December. Williams, who led United Nations efforts to end the latest session of violence in Libya in 2020, said elections are needed in the country. To give credibility to the country's constitutions, all the institutions are suffering a crisis of legitimacy, she added. I don't see any other exit for Libya other than a peaceful political process. After missing the initial date, Libya's election board proposed that presidential polls should take place on January 24th, but that could not be considered. In East Africa, Kenya's Supreme Court commences hearing constitutional review bill appeal. On Tuesday, Kenya's Supreme Court began hearing a controversial constitution review bill that has been at the core of politics for several years in the East African country. Known as the Building Bridges Initiative (BBI), this revision plans to create new positions in the executive, a prime minister, two deputy and opposition leader, and to increase the number of parliamentarians from 290 to 360. This opening up of power will water down the winner-takes-all rule, which he considers to be the cause of the post-election conflict in Kenya, according to the outgoing president, Kenyatta, who initiated the project. However, the bill, which was passed by Parliament in May and was to be put to a referendum, was taken to court by its critics. There was the first hearing, and then a court of appeal ruled that the president did not have the constitutional right to initiate such a process. The court also ruled that Kenyatta could be sued in civil court for illegally initiating the process. The hearing in the Supreme Court are scheduled to continue until Thursday. The judges will then announce the date of their decision. Analysts say that even if the Supreme Court rules in favor of the government and allows the law to be put to a referendum, it cannot be held before the election scheduled for 9th August. But since launched in 2018, BBI has reshaped the Kenyan political landscape. Still ahead tonight, economy needs deep reforms, the MIF's envoy to Tunisia says. The outgoing International Monetary Fund, IMF, country chief for Tunisia said that the economy of the North African state needs deep reforms, such as extremely implementing its vast public wage bill. Approaching the end of this three-year term, Jerome Varsha added that the pandemic had created the deepest recession since Tunisia's independence in 1956. Varsha said the country had pre-existing problems, in particular budget deficits and public debts, which have worsened in recent years. External deficits have also been continued in previous years, and above all, growth has been weak and largely insufficient. Growth dropped by almost 9% of GDP in 2020. In 2021, it only recovered by 3%. Unemployment remains high at over 18%. The IMF envoy believes that the country's economy needs deep structural reforms. According to the MIF representative, it's an economy that needs very deep, structural reforms, especially to improve the business environment, but it also needs a correction of macroeconomic imbalance, an improvement of the budgetary situation, and a deep reform of public enterprises. Kais Saied, Tunisian president, sacked the government and suspended parliament in July last year. The government has since asked the MIF for a bailout package, the fourth since the revolution. And on sports, AFCON 2021 as it continues, Ghana-Gabon final test on Tuesday. On Monday, the eve of their last decisive match against Comoros in the African Cup of Nations Group C, Andre and Jordan Ayew led Ghana training. Following a narrow 1-0 loss to Morocco and a 1-1 draw with Gabon, Milovan Rajavac's side lie alone in third in the table with just 1 point heading into their final group fixture. This will be the first encounter between Ghana and the Comoros at the African Cup of Nations. Ghana have only won one of their last 8 African Cup of Nations games, failing to score in half of those matches. They have just 1 point so far in this year's edition. They've never failed to win at least one group stage match in all their previous 22 appearances at the tournament. The Black Stars last failed to progress from their AFCON group in 2006. Morocco is already qualified to the knockout stage of the competition, having won their first 2 games against Ghana and Comoros, while Gabon needs a single point to go through as they have a 3 points advantage over third-placed Ghana. And finally, Group B, Senegal face Malawi as Guinea plays Zimbabwe. Senegal's football team, the Lions of Teranga, continued their preparation for Tuesday Group B last game against Malawi that are third with 3 points, which is ongoing. A win for either Senegal or Malawi will guarantee the winner qualifies for the next stage. Senegalese head coach Aliou Cissé said the West African team would treat the next game as the last, further admitting that the viewpoints have changed in competition. On Tuesday, meanwhile, Guinea and Zimbabwe prepared for their last Group B clash. And this is all for the news tonight. Just a quick reminder, young people need to vote. They need to get out there. Every vote counts. Educate yourself. Don't just vote, know what you're voting for and stand by it. This is from Nikki Reed. I want to thank all the ECWA executive for giving us this platform, and don't forget to follow us at all our social media platforms. I am Lois Turaki. Have a good evening.